Russian airstrikes have cut power to the decommissioned Chernobyl nuclear power plant.
Fears are rising over safety at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in
Ukraine says Russia has fired at least 80 missiles at targets across the country.
The 30th of September 2025, President Volodymyr Zelensky delivered his most alarming warning yet. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, Europe's largest, is in critical condition. External power lines are down. Backup diesel systems are straining. One has already failed. Without power, the cooling systems of Zaporizhzhia's reactors could shut down. And when nuclear reactors lose cooling, the world remembers names like Chernobyl and Fukushima. But this is not an isolated emergency. At the very same time, Ukraine has launched deep strikes inside Russia, hitting the Elektrodetal factory in Bryansk Oblast with a modified Neptune missile. Russia is reacting with nuclear warnings of its own, furious about Ukraine's request for Tomahawk cruise missiles from the US. And in Moscow, Vladimir Putin insists Russia is prevailing in what he calls a righteous battle, even as his government orders the largest autumn military draft in nearly a decade. This is not just war. It's a dangerous convergence of nuclear risk, high-tech warfare, and geopolitical brinkmanship. Tonight, we'll break it all down. Part 1. The nuclear hostage. For over 2 years, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant has been one of the most dangerous flashpoints of this war. Occupied by Russian forces since early 2022, it has remained in limbo, guarded by soldiers, monitored by the International Atomic Energy Agency, and held as what some analysts call a nuclear hostage. But now the situation has reached a breaking point. Russian shelling has destroyed or severed every external power line that once connected the plant to Ukraine's energy grid. Normally, a facility of this scale relies on a constant, stable flow of electricity to power cooling systems, the pumps and mechanisms that keep nuclear fuel from overheating. Without that electricity, the plant must depend on diesel generators. But those are temporary, fragile, and prone to failure. This week, one of the critical generators already failed. Zaporizhzhia is one step from catastrophe. Inspectors on site confirmed the blackout danger, saying the plant has been operating on emergency backup power far longer than ever intended. Their director, Rafael Grossi, stated, "We are playing Russian roulette with nuclear safety." For local residents in southern Ukraine, the fear is constant. Families who lived in nearby towns like Enerhodar have evacuated in waves over the years, but thousands remain within reach of fallout zones if something goes wrong. A radioactive release from Zaporizhzhia wouldn't just contaminate Ukraine, it could spread across Russia, Poland, Belarus, and much of Europe, depending on wind patterns. The message is chilling. This war is no longer just about artillery duels or drone swarms. It's about the potential for nuclear disaster on European soil. Part 2. Ukraine strikes back. Even as the nuclear emergency dominated headlines, Ukraine made a bold military move. On September 29, the Ukrainian military confirmed it had launched a modified Neptune missile, originally a naval anti-ship weapon, against a target 150 miles inside Russian territory. That target was the Elektrodetal factory in Karachev, Bryansk Oblast. The factory is not just another industrial site. This was not the first time Ukraine struck inside Russia, but the use of a Neptune missile, adapted for long-range land strikes, signals a new phase of innovation. Ukraine is stretching the limits of its arsenal, turning defensive weapons into tools of strategic offense. And Kyiv is not stopping there. President Zelensky has officially requested Tomahawk cruise missiles from the United States weapons with a range of up to 2,500 kilometers. With such a tool, Ukraine could hit Moscow itself. Part 3. Russia's response. Moscow wasted no time in reacting. Russian officials demanded clarity. If Ukraine gets Tomahawks, will they be fired with American targeting data? The implication was clear. If U.S. intelligence guides those strikes, Russia will consider it a direct act of war by Washington. Dmitry Medvedev, deputy chair of Russia's Security Council, went further. He warned that Europe was playing with fire and that a fatal accident could bring about the use of nuclear weapons. Once again, Russia is using nuclear rhetoric not just as strategy, but as intimidation. At the same time, Putin appeared on Russian state television, insisting that Russia is prevailing in its righteous battle. He framed the war not as aggression, but as a defense of Russian civilization. His message was as much to his own people as to the world a call for endurance as the war drags on. And endurance is what he's demanding. Part 4. NATO and the wider world. This war is not confined to Ukraine and Russia. On the same day as the Zaporizhzhia warning and the Bryansk strike, Ukraine revealed that it is now exporting its drone expertise to Europe. A Ukrainian drone unit has been dispatched to Denmark, helping NATO allies build a drone wall across Europe's eastern flank. The idea is simple but powerful. Create a network of surveillance and interception drones to monitor and block Russian aerial threats, from long-range bombers to kamikaze drones. For Europe, it's a way to harden defenses. For Ukraine, it's proof that its innovations on the battlefield are shaping Western military doctrine. Part 5. The nuclear versus conventional threshold. Here lies the central danger. Zaporizhzhia shows us that nuclear disaster can come not just from weapons, but from infrastructure. Russia's willingness to use the plant as leverage blurs the line between conventional and nuclear war. If Tomahawks arrive, Moscow will claim that NATO has crossed that blurred line. If Russia retaliates, even with tactical nuclear weapons, the world will face a nightmare escalation. Military analysts warn that we are entering a phase where miscalculation is as dangerous as intention. A strike too far, a reactor failure, a missile guided by the wrong intel. Any of these could trigger an uncontrollable spiral. Zelensky insists Ukraine will not be blackmailed. Russia must learn that there are consequences for terror, he said this week. But Russia's message is the opposite. Push us, and we'll take everyone down with us. This is why Zaporizhzhia matters so much. It is not just a Ukrainian plant, symbol of how fragile the line is between a regional war and a global catastrophe. Part 6. What comes next? Looking ahead, here's what to expect. Nuclear plant crisis. Unless power is restored, Zaporizhzhia remains in danger. The IAEA is pushing for an immediate ceasefire zone around the plant, but neither Russia nor Ukraine seems willing to yield. Tomahawk debate. The US is weighing whether to provide Ukraine with cruise missiles. If approved, expect Russian retaliation, possibly cyber attacks, energy disruption, or escalated strikes on Ukraine's infrastructure. Russian mobilization. The new draft of 135,000 troops will swell Russian numbers by winter. The question is whether poorly trained recruits can withstand Ukraine's battle-hardened defenses. Drone war expansion. Ukraine's drone tech is spreading through NATO. Expect more announcements of partnerships and deployments. Propaganda war. Both Putin and Zelensky will keep shaping narratives, one around endurance and morality, the other around resistance and survival. The war has always been about territory. Now it's about survival itself of people, of nations, and of a nuclear-safe Europe. This week may be remembered not just for a strike in Bryansk or a draft in Moscow, but for a chilling reality. Europe stood closer than ever to a nuclear accident triggered by war. Zaporizhzhia is not just a Ukrainian issue, it is a global one. If that plant melts down, the fallout does not respect borders. And as Ukraine strikes deeper into Russia and Russia rattles its nuclear saber, the stakes only climb higher. So tonight we ask you, what matters most in this war? Deterring Russia with weapons like Tomahawks, or preventing a nuclear accident at all costs? Which line is more dangerous to cross? Leave your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more updates.